So you had this kind of split between there's my work life and there's my home life. And my work life is capital. My home life is culture. You couldn't wait to leave work on Friday so you could do your culture stuff. But I think now we're starting to see these things come together more. The next generation is very in tune with this, that it's not one or the other. It really is both.
I'm very excited to be speaking with Sid Mofya, capital architect and band leader. Sid has built a career helping founders, investors, and business leaders bridge capital and opportunity. For years, he led the Draper Venture Network, a $2.5 billion global alliance of VC firms with over 650 tech companies. Now, he runs MOTIF Africa, a boutique consultancy expanding the capital stack for African enterprises in sustainable resources, agriculture, and renewable energy. A self-taught musician and producer, he created The Flight Risks, a virtual band exploring sound and culture. They launched their EP in September 2024. Sid is the co-founder of the Capital and Culture Conference, a pioneering conference in his home country of Zambia that connects global capital with Africa's creative and entrepreneurial energy. Sid, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. Really excited.
We are doing this interview a few months after your first Capital and Culture Conference. Now that you've had a little space to reflect, what were your big learnings from this first event?
Great question. Yeah, so we put the Capital and Culture Conference on initially as an experiment in how can we bring together two worlds that don't talk to each other very much, but we feel should. The world of capital is, it's all about the money and investing and return on investment. And the world of culture is kind of more about, preservation of heritage and leaning into what are the new trends, storytelling, and really felt surely these should be having a conversation, because the better we can tell those stories, the better the investments that we'll make, the quality of the investments that we make. And then, the capital also speaks into how you invest in what is the heritage of the future and how do you invest in that? So we put together about 125 people from across the globe. So we had about 30 or 40 people coming into Zambia from across the continent and from the US and the UK and the Middle East, and about 100 people or so from Zambia across industries, including mining, agriculture, the cultural sectors like tourism and music. And I think the big learning is the answer is yes. They can and should be speaking together. I think the other big learning is there's more to learn about how to do that more effectively.
Why don't you think this is happening more often in our culture? And I'm thinking, both in Zambia, in Africa, and also here in the US.
I think the last 100 years or so have been industrial.
Yes.
Industrialization was the thing. So that tended to crowd out culture, and culture became like an optional extra. But in the process, we discovered that industrialization, as good as it is, needs culture, because that's how we remain human. So you had this kind of split between there's my work life and there's my home life, and my work life is, you could even say my work life is capital, my home life is cultural. You couldn't wait to leave work on Friday so you could do your culture stuff. But I think now we're starting to see these things come together more as we realize, and I think the next generation is very, very in tune with this, that it's not one or the other. It really is both.
Oh, what a hopeful future to have it be both. For our listeners who might be unfamiliar with the world of finance and capital, how would you explain to them in a layperson's terms what expanding the capital stack for African enterprises means?
I'll say it from the way I see it. I see a lot of things that can be done, that need to be done. I see a lot of smart, motivated people. But I also see those things that can and need to be done not being done. And usually the conversation is there isn't enough capital to do those things fast enough that they make a difference. So what capital does is it accelerates the speed at which you can build a factory or make a farm or whatever it is that you're making, build a fintech app. Capital is an accelerator. And for me, expanding the capital stack means getting to those outcomes faster that are needed on the African continent. So more food for everybody, better transportation, more energy, everybody having access to energy.
An accelerant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have many years of experience in strategy, finance, and operations. You've worked at companies like PwC, Shell, and the UK Ministry of Justice. How do you see your work today bringing together those skills that you've developed throughout your career?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm a bit of a chameleon. Yeah, I feel privileged to have a very broad career. I've done engineering, project management, finances. I guess it gets rid of imposter syndrome for me because I can have an intelligent conversation with pretty much anybody. And if I don't know, I feel confident to say, I don't know. Can you explain that simpler for me? Yeah, so I see the value of it as connector, because that's a lot of what I'm doing. I think of what I'm doing as basically two verbs: connect and conduct. It's connecting and conducting, and having that broad experience allows me to do those things.
Yeah, connecting and conducting. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about the conducting side. You describe your band, The Flight Risks, as a virtual band. What does that actually mean?
Good question. So this band started during COVID because I was missing playing with a physical band.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I know I can't play with a band right now, but if I could, what would that band be like? And so I started imagining what the band would be like. And I came up with a whole band with a drummer, a bass player, a percussionist from Mexico, a horns player from South Africa. So it turned out I wanted a global band. And I went to town with this. I gave them names, I gave them backstories, and it was almost like a casting script for a movie. And so they started living in my head. And when after COVID, during COVID, I also wrote a lot of music. I was part of a songwriting group where we'd write a song a week. So I got a lot of reps in with writing music. And at the end of COVID, I had a lot of music and I wanted to record it. So I started looking for a producer who would help me capture this vision. And I found a producer, his name is Kyle, who really got it and who really got into the whole headspace of this is a virtual band, but we need to express the characteristics of these characters in how we create the music. So when I went to his studio to record, we would do, we're doing the Troy part now, and we get into character. We do the part for Troy. So it's kind of taking virtual lives and making them come alive in a piece of music.
And how close was the vision that you had during COVID to the reality that you got out into the world?
It changed a bit. So what I wanted to do, my original vision was, okay, so now we have these characters. It's almost like you have a play or a movie. And so when we play in the Bay Area, I will put out a call and I'll say, hey, the Flight Risks are playing. We've got, Julio, the percussionist. We've got Ade, the drummer. Who's going to play in those roles? And I'll put out a call and people would say, yeah, I'm interested in playing. And then would look at it not just from the musicality, but also like the person. How does that person fit into that character, that role? And then would play, and then the sound would be different here in the Bay Area compared to if we played in Montreal or Abuja in Nigeria, and would keep doing that, and it would be kind of this was the original vision, and I would still love to do that someday. But what I found was that extremely time intensive to execute.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing was whenever we play in a new place, I would actually look for a band, and then play with the band instead of playing with a new band every time. Because with a new band every time, it means you have to spend more time there before you actually play to get everybody together, get that chemistry together. Yep. So I relied on kind of pre-existing chemistry to say, right, okay, you guys, yeah, you are the Flight Risks sound here. So we've done that in St. Louis, did it in Atlanta, and then officially launched in Zambia with three different bands. The first one in St. Louis was a variation of the original vision, where we found different artists, and that's what I learned. Okay, this is, if I want to do this, I need to be doing this like full time. And that's all I do. You know what I mean? That wasn't going to work at that point in time. So I've kind of got a hybrid of the vision now, which I feel works in terms of we still get a different sound when we play in different places.
Sit at the same old place on the morning train. It goes round and around and around, 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 round and around and around and round. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Let's take a moment to reflect on this question. How does the sense of place affect how you experience the arts? Outside of hosting this podcast, I partner with leaders in the workplace to turn professional challenges into leadership successes and career progression. I love working with executive leaders, people managers, and of course, ampersands. If any of this sounds interesting to you, reach out to me at jessicawan.com. That's JESSICAWAN. Now, back to the show. Something that struck me listening to your album was the individual artwork on each track. Tell me a little bit of how that came to be and who those artists are.
So all the individual artworks are done by my friend Teresa Lay. She's amazing. So what she did, she was part of my songwriting group during COVID, and then I discovered she could write songs and she could do amazing artwork as well. And so what we did was, with every song, she would listen to the song, she would interpret it in her way, and then she'll do a sketch. My favorite thing of her is that she does these finger sketches that are kind of, they've got a lot of life, but they've also got this kind of lightness about them that I love. And so she would interpret the song, and we came up with a motif for each of the pieces of artwork. There is a musical instrument, sometimes pretty subtly hidden in there, It might be a train track that's like a xylophone. There is usually a bird and there's usually a flower of some description. And then she puts that together. And so we worked together on that over a course of a year. So, she's busy with her regular life, which does not involve artwork. But, every month or so would be going back and forth on what about this? And then, yeah, we've got it. And then she'll create that. So those are going to end up as the inserts for the vinyl album when we release that as well, and also the cover for each of the songs as we release them.
Wonderful. What do you hope will stay with people when they listen to your music or experience it live?
A lot of what I was thinking about and experiencing during COVID that lives in the songs is this whole idea of remembering who you are. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking a lot about that, and each of the songs has some of that imprint. So the Zambian word for remember, it's the same in several languages, so Bantu languages that are similar, is kumbuka. Mm-hmm. So when the album's fully released, that's what it will be called, kumbuka, which means remember. And I hope that, the music will have that as a something that kind of remains when people listen to it. But I also kind of just hope they'll connect with the characters that made the music, the virtual characters. So included in as we release the music will be here are the characters, and here's what they're like. And so my hope is that there'll be some kind of interaction with those characters, because they were there.
Yeah, very cool. How does it feel for you to make music?
It's very satisfying. It can be frustrating as well. But I feel like for me, it expresses something that nothing else can. Because usually, in this whole process, I keep getting fascinated by it. I've gone through it many, many times, but every single time it fascinates me how you can start from nothing, and then at the end of a process, you've got something. It didn't exist before, now it exists, and it's a thing, and it has an effect on me writing it, and it has an effect on somebody else listening to it. That process just fascinates me no end, and I think my family thinks I'm weird, but so I get that. I get a kick out of going from nothing to something. I love crafting lyrics that have emotional quality to them. Yeah, I think words are powerful, and finding a way to express something in such a way that somebody else might receive it and it has some kind of interaction with them. I think there's a lot of beauty in all that. So I think the word I'm reaching for is beauty. I think that's the overall. It feels beautiful.
You have actually been a lifelong ampersand. You mentioned earlier that you were an engineer, you were a chemical engineer. And I remember we had talked earlier and you had shared a story with me about playing Jesus in your local community theater and having that ampersand. I'm curious, as a child growing up, was straddling two worlds even on the table? What did you think your adult life might look like, and how does it actually compare?
Yeah, I don't think it was on the table when I was a child, even though I was very curious and would jump at the chance to do pretty much anything. But I really thought of those other anythings as extracurricular. So there's the work that you do, the serious work that you do, and then there's these other things that are fun that you do, and you can play sport, and play music, and you can do all those things. Knock your socks off, but you've got to do the serious stuff. That's how I thought about it as a child. I wanted to be a doctor, so I went the science route. I happened to love physics and math. So that was all interesting to me, but I also was, acting, I was playing music, I was, doing debate. So I was kind of doing all the things. But it was, I guess I enjoyed the experience, but I expected to be spending my adult life doing serious stuff.
And what changed along the way in terms of how you're thinking of your art, your creative entrepreneurship as not just extracurricular, but a core part of you?
I think it's discovering that I was more an artist than I was an engineer. So I studied chemical engineering, and I could do the engineering. But there were some times when I was doing the engineering and I just have this fog where, I remember sitting in the office trying to work on this problem that my boss had given me, and I didn't know how to go about it. I was stuck. And the easy thing was to just go and ask somebody and say, hey, I'm stuck. Can you help me? But in my mind, I was like, no, I should be able to do this. And I just kept going and trying to do it. And after about a week of no output, my boss would come and say, hey, what's going on? Can I help you? No, I'm good. But what that did for me was kind of hit the brick wall and see that I could also see at the same time there were other people that would just lap this stuff up. They loved the engineering. It's like, this is their thing. Helped me realize it's not my thing. I can do it if I apply myself, but it's not my thing. So what is? What I quickly found was I was much more at home on the business side of the enterprise as opposed to the engineering side. So when I moved to the business side, I was like, oh yeah, this is my stuff. I like this stuff. And also doing the acting and the music on the side, that always gave me like a lot of life and a lot of joy. But I guess I still believe, well, that's not, you can't make money doing that, so you better still do this stuff. But I think at a certain point, I decided, well, it's worth putting them together because they're both valuable for what they bring to my life, and I just cannot imagine myself not doing art.
Yeah, and there's more to value than economic value.
Absolutely.
Besides sitting in the operator role, you have worked as an advisor and a board member to organizations like Lions Africa, Kalene Education Fund, Restless Development, and Ashinaga Institute. For our listeners who are interested in advising or joining a board, what advice do you have for them?
I'd say find something that aligns with you as a person. So find organizations that are doing things that you want to grow or to exist in the world, and support those. For people that are just getting started, it's generally easier and quicker to start with nonprofits. They're looking for advisors that can help with not just advice, but connections and fundraising and so on. And so lending your networks and expertise to those organizations is a good way to start.
Through these interviews, we are co-creating the Ampersand Manifesto, Principles for Leading a Multi-Passionate Life. What are some principles that you live by?
Play the long game. Work with people that are aligned, values aligned with you. Mm-hmm. I try to assume good intentions from the others. and to bring more of myself to my interactions. And this last one is something that I've tried to do more of in the last couple of years, where I start having conversations about investing or whatever, but I bring the music in. And it just makes for much richer conversations. And it might have been a boring investment conversation, but the other person lights up when you talk about the music and you connect on that. And yeah, so.
Sid, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Folks, you can learn more about Sid at sidmofya.com. And you can find the EP, We Are the Flight Risks, on Bandcamp. And we'll link to these in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
I had a chance to listen back on my interview with Sid, and I wanted to share a few key takeaways. 1, the idea of the virtual band is so cool and so innovative. I hadn't heard anything quite like it before. An open casting call for the characters in the band, like you might do for a play or musical. It was fun to hear about Sid's original vision compared to the reality, and the key learning around the value of chemistry between the musicians. 2, Sid mentioned that a main theme of the flight risks is remembering who you are. I also saw this as a strong theme throughout Sid's work, with him bringing capital to Africa, organizing the Capital and Culture Conference, and deciding to pursue his artistic side more deeply. 3, we worked on this interview in early March 2025, which is 5 years after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hearing about Sid's major outpouring of songwriting gave me a chance to reflect on what came out of the pandemic for me, and what it might look like to bring back some of those projects now. We are always planting seeds, and 5 years later is a great time to take stock of what has sprouted. If you liked this show, share it with your friends and fellow Ampersands, and make sure to hit the follow button to be notified when new episodes drop. It would mean the world to us if you took 2 minutes to rate and review the show. Just go to the main show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and look for the stars.